This video will offend most women. Calvin Reid exposes it. Have you ever wondered why some truths feel forbidden? Why certain realities about men and women are discussed only in whispers behind closed doors? What I'm about to share with you has gotten men cancelled, fired from jobs, ostracized from social circles. But here's the uncomfortable reality. You already know it's true. Deep down, beneath layers of social conditioning and politically correct thinking, you've experienced it firsthand. Calvin Reid, the controversial psychologist whose work has been systematically removed from mainstream platforms, exposed a fundamental truth about male-female dynamics that most women can never admit. And today I'm going to reveal it all. Before I continue, I need to make something clear. This isn't about hatred. This isn't about division. This is about understanding the primal psychological forces that shape human behavior, forces that, once recognized, can never be unseen. If you're ready to see beyond the veil to understand what's been hidden from you, press like on this video right now. This simple action tells the algorithm that men still hunger for truth in an age of comfortable lies. And if you're already feeling resistance to these ideas, that sensation of discomfort rising in your chest, ask yourself, why does the mere suggestion of forbidden knowledge trigger such a powerful reaction? That reaction is exactly what we'll be exploring today. The Great Deception. You were told to be kind, to be vulnerable, to be soft. You were told that emotional openness is attractive, that showing weakness builds connection, that women want a sensitive man who shares his feelings. But then you watched, as the men who followed this advice were systematically friend-zoned, cheated on, and eventually discarded. You watched as women claimed to want one thing while consistently choosing another. You watched as the very behaviors you were encouraged to display became the reasons you were rejected. This isn't coincidence. It's not bad luck. And it's certainly not your fault. It's the result of a fundamental misalignment between what women consciously believe they want and what they unconsciously respond to. Calvin Reid calls this the Great Deception, not because women are deliberately lying, but because most are genuinely unaware of the disconnect between their stated preferences and their actual behavior. In his groundbreaking work, Women Magic Lure, Reid presents overwhelming evidence that women's conscious minds and unconscious attraction mechanisms operate on entirely different frequencies. And when these frequencies clash, it's almost always the man who pays the price. At this point, you might be thinking, is he saying all women are manipulative or deceptive? No. I'm saying something far more nuanced and far more challenging to the current social narrative. I'm saying that modern society has created an environment where women themselves are disconnected from their own psychological drivers, where they've been taught to deny their own nature, where they've been conditioned to believe that their conscious preferences should override millions of years of evolutionary psychology. This isn't about blame, it's about clarity. And that brings us to Calvin Reid's most controversial insight of all, the brutal truth. Here it is, the truth that will offend most women who hear it. Women are not attracted to men who need them. Let that sink in for a moment. The very behaviors that signal investment, care, and commitment, the qualities women consciously say they want, often trigger unconscious disinterest or even revulsion. When you prioritize a woman above yourself, when you make her the center of your emotional world, when you show that you need her approval, validation, or presence to be okay, you activate ancient psychological circuits that interpret these behaviors as weakness, dependency, and low status. Reid's research shows that women's attraction mechanisms were shaped during a time when male survival value was measured by strength, resilience, and emotional stability, not by vulnerability, neediness, or emotional dependency. This creates a cruel paradox for modern men. 1. You're told that showing vulnerability and emotional need will make you more attractive. 2. You follow this advice and become more emotionally expressive and dependent. 3. This behavior triggers unconscious disinterest in the women you're trying to attract. 4. Your relationship suffers or ends. 5. You're told you weren't vulnerable or emotional enough. 6. The cycle repeats, leaving you increasingly confused and demoralized. The uncomfortable truth is that much of what you've been taught about relationships, attraction, and gender dynamics has been deliberately designed to keep you in this cycle, confused, frustrated, and constantly seeking answers from the very sources that misled you in the first place. Why? Because confused men are profitable. They buy books, courses, therapy sessions, dating apps, and endless self-improvement products trying to solve a problem that has been fundamentally misdiagnosed. If these insights are resonating with you, if you're beginning to see patterns in your own relationships that reflect these truths, then I need you to do two things right now. 1. Hit the like button to help this knowledge reach other men who need it. Share in the comments one relationship dynamic where you now recognize this principle at work. Your comment might be the exact insight another man needs to break free from his own patterns of confusion. Now let's go deeper into what Calvin Reid discovered about the dependency paradox and why it destroys relationships from within. The dependency paradox. Have you ever noticed that the moment you become emotionally dependent on a woman, something in the relationship shifts? That the more you need her validation, the less she seems to value your presence. That your increasing emotional investment often correlates with her decreasing interest. Calvin Reid identified this phenomenon with clinical precision in his analysis of what he calls the dependency paradox. In Women Magic Lure, he writes, "The more a man needs a woman's approval, the less valuable that approval becomes to her. This creates a devastating catch-22 for men who follow conventional relationship advice." 1. You're told that emotional investment demonstrates commitment. 2. Your emotional investment creates dependency on her response. 3. This dependency reduces your perceived value in her eyes. 4. Her interest wanes as your need increases. 5. You respond by increasing your investment further. 6. The cycle accelerates until the relationship collapses. This isn't a modern phenomenon. It's not the result of dating apps or changing gender roles. It's a pattern as old as human attraction itself, one that Reid identified with remarkable clarity through his analysis of thousands of relationship case studies. And it's a pattern that benefits from your ignorance of its existence. To understand why this paradox exists, we need to examine its evolutionary roots. For most of human history, women's survival and that of their children depended on partnering with men who could provide and protect regardless of external circumstances. Men who were emotionally dependent or psychologically needy represented a survival risk, not an asset. Reid's research shows that women evolved highly sensitive detection mechanisms for male dependency and neediness because the cost of choosing wrong was catastrophically high. These mechanisms operate beneath conscious awareness, which is why a woman can sincerely believe she wants an emotionally expressive, vulnerable partner while simultaneously feeling her attraction fade when she actually gets one. Modern society has attempted to override these ancient circuits with new social programming. But Reid's work demonstrates that conscious beliefs rarely triumph over unconscious selection mechanisms when it comes to attraction and mate choice. This creates 3 distinct layers of female response. 1. Social layer. What? She says she wants, influenced by current social norms. 2. Conscious layer. What she thinks she wants, her genuine beliefs about her preferences. 3. Unconscious layer. What actually triggers her attraction, ancient evolutionary mechanisms. The conflict between these layers creates the confusion, mixed signals, and frustration that characterize modern dating for most men. At this point, you might be thinking, this sounds like it's encouraging men to be emotionally unavailable or manipulative. Nothing could be further from the truth. What Reid advocates isn't emotional withdrawal. It's emotional self-sufficiency, not game playing, but genuine independence. The man who understands these dynamics doesn't love less. He loves from a position of strength rather than need. He doesn't connect less. He connects without the burden of dependency. And most importantly, he doesn't blame women for a dynamic that exists within the structure of human psychology itself. This is the crucial distinction that separates wisdom from resentment, and it's why these teachings have been systematically removed from mainstream discourse about attraction and relationships. Because a man who understands the mechanism of attraction without resenting it becomes truly dangerous. Not to women, but to systems that profit from male confusion and insecurity. The solution: authentic strength. So what's the solution? If emotional dependency triggers disinterest, should men become cold, distant, and unavailable? Absolutely not. Calvin Reid's work points to a more nuanced approach that he calls authentic strength, a state of being where a man's emotional expression comes from abundance rather than scarcity. The key distinction is this: weak vulnerability. I need you to validate my emotions because I can't handle them myself. Strong vulnerability. I choose to share my emotions with you because I'm completely capable of processing them myself. The first creates dependency. The second creates connection. Reid outlines 4 principles for developing authentic strength. 1. Emotional self-sufficiency. Develop the ability to process your own emotions without requiring external validation. Your emotional state becomes your responsibility, not hers. 2. Purpose beyond relationship. Cultivate meaningful pursuits and passions that exist independently of any relationship. Your sense of fulfillment comes from within, not from her approval. 3. Outcome independence. Detach your sense of self-worth from any particular relationship outcome. You can fully invest while remaining completely prepared to walk away if necessary. 4. Conscious. Vulnerability. Choose to share your feelings from a position of strength rather than weakness. Vulnerability becomes a gift you offer, rather than a need you hope to have filled. When you begin to embody these principles, something remarkable happens. The very women who might have found your neediness repulsive become drawn to your authentic strength, not because you're playing games or being manipulative, but because you're aligning with the deeper psychological truths that govern attraction. This is why women want men who don't need them, not because they desire emotional distance, but because they unconsciously respect emotional self-sufficiency. If you've stayed with me this far, you're already demonstrating the intellectual courage that Calvin Reid valued above all qualities. Now, I'm asking you to take 3 specific actions. 1. Like this video to ensure this knowledge reaches other men who need it. 2. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we're just scratching the surface of psychological insights that have been hidden from modern men. 3. Comment below with the single biggest realization you're taking away from this video. Remember, the systems that profit from your confusion are counting on your silence. They're counting on you consuming this information passively and never sharing it. Prove them wrong. The price of truth. Before we conclude, we need to address an uncomfortable reality. There's a price for understanding these truths. When you begin to see the disconnect between what women say they want and what actually triggers their attraction, you'll face a choice. You can become resentful, viewing women as deceptive or manipulative, or you can develop compassion, recognizing that most women are as confused by these contradictions as men are. Reid was emphatic on this point. The goal isn't to manipulate women based on these insights, but to free yourself from manipulation by understanding the underlying dynamics. Women aren't the enemy. They're responding to psychological drivers they didn't choose and often don't consciously recognize. The real adversary is a system that, 1. Teaches men to behave in ways that diminish their attractiveness. 2. Teaches women to deny their own psychological responses. 3. Profits from the resulting confusion and frustration. When you understand this, resentment transforms into clarity, confusion transforms into confidence, and relationships transform from power struggles into genuine connections between 2 people who understand the true nature of attraction. Calvin Reid didn't write his psychology as a dating strategy. He wrote it as a pathway to authentic existence, in a world that constantly misrepresents the nature of male-female dynamics. But the implications for attraction and relationships are unavoidable. The man who maintains his emotional self-sufficiency, his authentic strength, becomes naturally attractive precisely because he doesn't need external validation to be complete. This isn't about manipulation. It's about liberation, freedom from the endless cycle of confusion, frustration, and disappointment that characterizes modern dating for most men. The choice before you now is simple but profound. Will you continue to follow advice that contradicts the fundamental nature of attraction? Or will you align yourself with the psychological truths that actually govern human behavior? Reed made his choice. Now it's time to make yours. This isn't just about understanding women. It's about understanding the fundamental structure of human attraction, a structure that, once recognized, can never again limit you in the same way. The path to authentic strength isn't easy, but as Calvin Reed himself said, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Get pissed off if you need to, then get free. The authentic strength that creates genuine attraction awaits.